Magadang umaga. Really enjoy the hospitality and the opportunity to come here whenever I can, and certainly to speak on a topic that is near and dear to my heart. Unfortunately, if you came here to hear a sales presentation on success factors, you'll probably have to look to another place. I've got an interesting opportunity to share with you a little bit about what, making HR's strategic value shine. And this is an area of passion of mine. So, been in the industry for 20 years in some upstart technology companies focused on changing the game for HR. And really looking at technology as a platform to provide that solution. I've been fortunate enough to know Darcy, our kickoff speaker today, for I think about 18 years. Through that, we've partnered through a number of different solutions. And the success that he's enjoyed and the success that he has had from that, I've been a follower of his and a fan of his, and certainly the organizations that he's brought together have provided some great solutions, and so we're proud to partner with them in this region. So if you want to hear a little bit more about SuccessFactors or SAP, we've got some talented people out in the foyer that can take you through the products and applications that I'll allude to today. Throwing at you a little bit of a concern, and the concern is this: if this shouldn't be a cause for alarm, I don't know what is. Probably the premier academic journal / magazine that most CEOs are subscribing to is calling out our name. This is a cause for concern. And while there might be pockets of organizations that are doing really good things, by and large, as an industry, HR has to pick up its game. And so when we talk about making HR's strategic value shine, I think that this is a pretty big undertaking. And what I'm going to talk through in the next 20 minutes or so is not a silver bullet necessarily, but I think that there are some pieces to the puzzle that are going to be very, very important for you to consider. And Brian Acton, many of you, I don't expect any of you to necessarily know who he is, but he should be maybe familiar to you as I walk through this story. But essentially, he was an engineer at Yahoo. Had a very successful career building up through different levels of management at Yahoo. And then got frustrated with his job one day. And so I love Twitter. I'm on Twitter. You see my Twitter handle up there. If you're on Twitter and you want to retweet some of these pages, by all means, go ahead. But on Twitter, this is well documented. Brian gets upset at his job today, and he tweets this on May 2009. In August of 2009, he says, Facebook turned me down. It was a great opportunity to connect with some fantastic people looking forward to life's next adventure. Any idea what life's next adventure was? This is what we call in our industry a very expensive cost per hire. 30 employees at a company that Facebook bought because they turned him down originally when he applied for a job. And we don't know the whole story there. But essentially, a great employee at Yahoo, and so for all we know, he could have built this at Yahoo, and WhatsApp would be part of the capabilities of Yahoo. But instead, it's today part of Facebook. So why do I tell this story? Because Brian Acton symbolizes to us in the room what's wrong with HR. Here we have a super talented individual who has all of the capabilities, is a rainmaker by all definitions, has all the skills that we want, and at some point decides that life isn't that great at Yahoo, and so he embarks on a journey. We lost his attention. And when he couldn't find another fit, he went out and he started his own company. And then that company ended up acquiring him, and he's a very happy person now today, I'm quite sure, with that. But essentially, when we think about the job of HR, and while we can blame the folks at Yahoo for this particular situation, and blame the folks at Twitter, and blame the folks at Yahoo or at Facebook for this, essentially when we take a look at the problem here is how many of our HR departments could actually find the Brian Actons in our company today? Who of us knows where the Brian Actons are, the future people who are building these $19 billion companies? Do we know who they are? It's not focused on the things that are absolutely changing the game. We're stuck in a place that is really somewhere else in the business. And I think that that's part of the reason why the Harvard Business Review is saying we need to blow up HR. You know, the other part of it is when we think about what HR has stood for from the beginning of time, it really comes down to, well, we've got to hire the right people, we've got to focus those people on the right things, we've got to give them feedback so they do things in the right way, we've got to give them opportunities so they get the right development. And now, relatively new to our profession, is we've got to have the right data so we can make those sort of decisions and turn them around very quickly. But even those types of 5 criteria aren't the things that our HR departments are doing with regularity, and certainly not with the type of precision that the business looks to us and does. So when I look at the problems that HR needs to focus on, and some of the things that are relative to the business that say, how can we change the game? How can we make sparks fly in HR? How can we be chosen in HR as the next leaders of this organization? It comes down to this. Right now, according to Deloitte and the studies that they've done with over 5,000 companies, culture, engagement, and retention is now the #1 issue. 87% of companies rate this as urgent and high priority. Yet only half of those companies feel like they're in a position right now with the capabilities, the tools, the empowerment, and everything that they have to be able to drive this sort of culture within their organizations. This is a problem. If you don't think that you have the power to drive that culture, to drive that impact, how can you be held accountable to keep the Brian Actons in your organization? Let's move it back a little bit further. How many of us are driving the types of engagement activities and the cultural activities that need to be able to build the brands and the desirable places to work in our region? So these are the types of things that are important. And I would add to that in addition to where HR is living right now, where we need to go is not just focused on culture, engagement, and retention. HR, in all of the companies that represented themselves so far this morning, there has been an immense amount of change. And all of them talked about acquisitions. All of them talked about moving into different regions and geographies and dealing with that amount of change. We in HR need to be at the table as soon as a company is thinking about we need to move into this product area or this geography. We need to be helping making those discussions on what are the companies that need to be acquired. Are we going to buy? Are we going to borrow? Are we going to lease employees along the way to help make us move into those particular challenges and issues? And essentially, when I take a look at it, and I want to ask this question, how many of you are familiar with Uber? And the example of Grab Taxi was up there. Okay, great. Almost everybody's familiar with Uber, for good or for bad, right? So I hope if I don't offend anybody with this, and maybe some of your partners or spouses or whatever might be in the taxi industry, or maybe you've been in government and this is an issue that's front of mind right now. But I think what would be interesting if we draw some parallels between what's happening with Uber and what HR could actually do to change the game here. So bear with me as I walk through this journey, because I think it's a really exciting sort of changing the game disruption that HR can consider. So what can we learn from this? This quote's really impactful, but essentially this is what Uber has done. Everything should be made as simple as possible, but not simpler. Interesting quote, but really what it means is if you take a look at your Uber app today, if you've got it on your phone, there is nothing profound about this. The technology isn't, crazy off-the-shelf awesome. Essentially what it is it's an app that sits on top of a Google map that, because you've got some connection with your phone and an internet browser, you can ask people to come pick you up, and then the taxi on the vehicle on the other side can drop you off in a different location. It's a connectivity app that sits on top of Google Maps. It's not, it's not elegant by any standpoint. It's simple. But it's not to the point where it's regressive in the type of technology that it's providing. It's really innovative in terms of what it's doing and the sort of matchmaking service that's there. So if I think about this and I take it forward to HR, I think simplicity means looking seriously at the business problem over here and identifying the essential change or solution that people need to make their work better, and implementing a solution that focuses on people. So it's basically like this. The business problem is over here. The people solution is over here. How do we connect the dots? So my first question as an HR person in the boardroom or with my managers should be, what is the business problem we're trying to solve here? Do we have the talent in the organization today to take us to solve that particular problem? It is all about the platform. Because the platform allows me, in the case of Uber, it's not, it's not super elegant, but it is increasingly engaging. I open up the app, it tells me exactly where I am, it shows me all of the different cars that are in the vicinity, it tells me how soon that car is going to be there. It's engaging. The other part of it is that the value of the platform is actually dictated by the number of interactions. So if I can get all of my employees on a system, not just a one-way communication, but people, employees talking to HR, but actually employees talking with other employees, managers working with other employees inside their direct responsibility, but also across the organization, leaders speaking with employees, people speaking with partners, understanding all of those different solutions, using what we call jam in SuccessFactors to be able to communicate across the platform. That type of interaction becomes extremely powerful. And in the Uber example, in this particular scenario, there's an exceeding of expectations that happens when you use this particular solution. So not only does it take over from what the taxi companies aren't doing today, as is indicated on the left-hand side here, but pickup times and the coverage density, and by that I mean it's not just for the CBD area, it's actually for a wider metropolitan use. How payment is captured through a credit card. I mean, civility. I walked into my Uber driver today and greeted me as Mr. Gordon, hello, hey, having a nice day, all of that sort of thing. I would never get that through a taxi experience. And then the other part of it is trust and safety. I can track where I'm going, what I'm doing. I get the phone number. If I forget something in the car, I can call that person back. There's a lot of different things that it changes the game. But that's really not enough. What's happening is that the Uber phenomenon is actually taking it from a pure urban area and it's moving it into the rural areas as well. It's democratizing the whole experiences of how this technology platform is happening. It's actually being used as a rental car experience. I have 2 children, age 9 and 11. I would never send them in Singapore in a taxi cab. However, I would think of putting them in an Uber because I can track them the whole way along. I can see how they're moving. I can contact the driver at any point in time, and I get to pay for it through them so they don't have to hold on to any cash. All of these different types of things change the game. And so when we think about how this actually applies to HR, there's an element of real sort of evolutionary change. And by evolutionary change, I mean, okay, we don't need to just put in a performance management system, or a recruiting system, or a compensation system, or a system of record for HR. We can actually change the game by putting a platform in place that really talks about the fact that HR doesn't need to live in this very operations-focused, predictable, procedure-oriented place. It can actually move the needle to basically say, you know what? Dealing with a recruitment system doesn't solve our problems, because what that does is it solves hiring for the moment. But if I put recruiting on top of performance, I now get quality of hire. So now I can speak to a different level of integer that's happening here. I start solving bigger problems. I talk about an engagement platform that takes my employees and makes them feel part of the recruitment aspect as well. And so I can actually push all of these different elements through a platform that's a lot more engaging as part of it. And that's what's going to get us. That's what's going to not just drive the culture, but the retention and the engagement of the employees that we need in the organization. And just to wrap up too, I think that it's not enough to just basically say, let's put a platform in place for HR if we're basically going to turn on the strategic value of HR. It's not just about saying, okay, here's the platform that we need. There are partners that need to come into play. There's expertise. There's business leaders. There's integration partners that all need to be part of this. And I think that's why we're really fortunate to be partnered up with syncHRony in this particular area around this, because they bring that expertise. But I think that the other part of it is that we look forward now. And this chart, although it's an eye chart for those of you in the back and you can't see it too clearly, I apologize for that. The mobile internet is a huge part of it. But as we move through this, it's the Internet of Things. It's 3D printing. It's all of these different aspects. Regardless of your industry out here today, whether you're in customer services, in BPO, in healthcare, in technology, your organizations, and I believe this is an HR challenge. I believe HR needs to own this. That if you took the list of these 12 and you said, where in my company, where in my industry can any of these 12 be making an impact for the future? So how do we come into this? Well, at SAP and SuccessFactors, the organization that I'm proud to be part of, has a platform that allows us to combine a number of different things. And it's content, and it's technology, and it's a user experience that's compelling, and all of that. And basically what it does is it helps you connect the business strategies of the organization to the business outcomes that you're trying to drive in the company. And so I welcome you to go out and speak with the people from syncHRony to be able to see this application in its running mode, and to understand, you know, how some of those things can be realized. But because we actually need to move very, very quickly, and we've got accountants in the room, or former accountants in the room, we've got people that are watching money, and we're, you know, and we can't go and ask, you know, the CFO for millions of dollars to do things. Some of the quick impacts that we need to be able to drive, and what you're not seeing or not able to read past probably, you know, 3 feet from me, is the size of the different bubble here is the impact of that particular action on your organization, financial impact. The color of that is the risk to the enterprise of doing it or not doing it. So for instance, I put everything on there. I've said, you know, let's say the CEO or the CFO came to you today and said, you know what, we need to get into a cost-cutting mode. I need to know, HR, what you're prepared to do. What are you prepared to do to help us cut costs? There is an answer there, and that answer could be one of these things. Suspend HR programs. Well, it's quick to do that. It's extremely painful, and it's highly risk-oriented to the employees of the organization. If we all of a sudden saying we're getting rid of our payroll system, we're getting rid of our system of record, we're getting rid of our recruiting solution, there's huge risk to that. But it is a cost-cutting measure. Other sort of aspects that are up there is, I have something called move CapEx to OpEx. If you're in an on-prem world today using a system that is outdated and on-premise, and you've got your IT departments working through that, some of the things that you can do to be able to move the ledger in terms of your capabilities is to move to the cloud. We can deploy it quickly, we can do some things really, really quickly, but we can more importantly move money that is sitting in your CapEx budget into an OpEx world. So some of these things are easy to do, quick impact on the ledger. But as you see, I go through some of these different aspects that say, well, maybe I want to look at a learning program or a social learning program or a recruiting program, or I want to look at outsourcing, or all of those different aspects. Now this will change from different industries and different companies, and it's really a guidepost to be able to do that. But I welcome you to have that conversation, either with myself today or Darcy and Andrew and their team today, to kind of walk through some of those aspects.